A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
My next guest needs very little introduction. Can I just say, too, thank you so much for all your call-ins for the past hour. That was a wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed it. But my next guest is Mandy Warby, Vision Christian Media's very own. She's sort of like royalty here. Mandy, I'm going to ask you straight up.
I'm going to use that. I'm going to milk that.
How many times, like I see you going off on the trips with your hubby and that, and I love Israel myself. I've been there, but nowhere near like what you've been. How many times have you actually been in Israel, and how many times has that been as a tour leader?
I've been to Israel 24 times.
Wow.
And I've been a tour leader there about 20 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we're talking to somebody who really knows her stuff, not only knows her stuff, but actually really cares about Israel and the Middle East. So we're keen to get this update from you. I want to start with there's been a recent hospital attack in Gaza. Now, this is just an indication to us that Hamas has no concern for their own people. They use civilian buildings and infrastructure from which to wage war.
They do.
Tell us what's happened.
Yeah, well, look, from the very beginning of this conflict, October 7, 2023, Hamas has been using all civilian buildings. Now, we've covered this before on this program, that it's illegal under international law to fire on or attack a civilian building, hospital, mosque, any kind of place of worship, schools, homes, doesn't matter. It's illegal unless the fighting is coming from those buildings, whether it's weapons storage, whether it's support from, hiding, using it for meetings, then it becomes a legitimate target. And Hamas has done this with every hospital in Gaza. So the recent one, of course, the whole world condemned Israel for hitting another hospital.
Well, exactly, because it's such bad look. But, how do they not attack if that's where the fighting is coming from?
But that's why Hamas use those places, because they go, we're protected here. But they've become a legitimate target. So what does Israel do? She warns them. The hospital is empty. Not one death took place in the hospital because Israel got everybody to safety. Then they went and dealt with the Hamas terrorists. There was another one, actually, in Gaza as well that I found out about just this morning. But before I get to that, there was the director of nursing at the Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis. His name was Mohammed Sukkar.
So Khan Yunis is in Gaza? That's what we're talking about?
Khan Yunis is in Gaza, yes. But this gentleman put up a notice that the hospital was for patients only, not for armed militants. And so Hamas member, Soraya, his name is Soraya Al-Quds, he sent a message directly threatening him and anybody else that wants to stop Hamas from using the hospital, so threatening them. So they don't... The people of Gaza don't want Hamas in their hospitals and schools and mosques.
No.
But they're being forced to become human shields.
Yeah.
And these places are then targeted. Hamas doesn't care about their own people.
No.
They just hate Israel.
Yeah.
But I got a report this morning. This coming from Amir Safadi. He's a Messianic Jewish believer. He's been on Vision numerous times. He released some information to say that the normal activity at the Al Amal Hospital in Khan Yunis has been suspended. What that means is that the normal medical procedures and processes have stopped because Hamas has taken over the operating rooms. And some Palestinian sources from within Gaza have released photographs of the corridors and the rooms in the hospitals, which I've seen myself. They're empty. They're completely devoid of nursing staff, doctors, patients. They're empty because Hamas has taken over the hospital. And there's an IDF spokesperson who is actually an Arab and speaks Arabic. His name is Avihai Adrayi, and he said, Hamas crimes against hospitals in Gaza do not stop. This is a group that turns hospitals into military outposts and patients into human shields.
So we're talking about innocent people here.
Innocent people.
And so where are those innocent people being put if they're being removed from the hospitals? Are there makeshift hospitals
Israel
happening?
sets up makeshift hospitals, provide all the equipment, they provide everything, and they set up places for them where they can go and to safety. They've done it right from the very beginning, Wendy.
Yeah, because this is where, your heart breaks for those innocent people there being used as human shields. Okay, there's the new Syrian regime. Can you fill us in about that and its attitude toward Israel?
Yeah, okay. Well, the new regime is basically the head of the new regime. His name is Abu Muhammad al-Jilani. He now goes by the name Ahmed Hussein al-Sharaa. He was part of al-Qaeda and ISIS at different times during the Syrian civil war, broke away from them, started his own group. He is an internationally recognised terrorist. He's a designated terrorist.
So he wouldn't be allowed to come to Australia?
Well, I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know because he's now a diplomat and promised to be a moderate, and he just wears a suit. He got rid of his fatigues, wears a suit, and he's being courted by the whole world. But his fighters, his quote-unquote fighters, have been decimating the Christian, Druze and Alawite communities in Syria. Just going in there, it's just been a bloodbath. Nobody's saying anything. But Israel has set up a buffer zone along the southwest border of Syria to keep the terrorists from their own border. You see, Syria doesn't have diplomatic relationship with Israel. They don't recognise Israel. So Israel is protecting her own borders since the Assad regime was kicked out and al-Jilani or al-Sharaa, whatever his name is, since he came in. And the Christian and Druze communities along there quite happy to have Israel protect them. They want Israel to keep them safe.
So what happens with the other Arab countries? Like, we're looking at the United Arab Emirates, for instance. What happens
United
there?
Arab Emirates has a fabulous relationship with Israel. They're now normalised. And what happened recently was that Israel had a meeting with al-Sharaa or al-Jilani, whatever he calls himself, in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. And both sides supposedly discussed the possibility of a normalised ties between Israel and Syria. And UAE said that they would sweeten the pie by funding or putting investment into Syria with their infrastructure. And I haven't seen the details in the mainstream media, but it was reported in the Middle East Spectator, and there's a Druze Israeli former Knesset member in Israel who confirmed this meeting. We're going to have to see how it unfolds, but in Islam, being duplicitous is okay for the cause of the religion. See, they've just had a meeting with Israel, but also al-Jilani, al-Sharaa, he's just come from a meeting with Qatar. Now, Qatar is the second biggest sponsor of terror in the world, second only to Iran, and they would like nothing more than to see the demise of Israel, and they've been supporting and funding Hamas for years. So it's very hard to have confidence that anything long-term can come out of it because it's so duplicitous. It's duplicitous with a religion that allows for duplicity for its own cause.
Yes, it does. It's just there's so much to talk about. What about the latest with the Houthis in Yemen? What about that?
Okay, that's that's a really complex thing. Look, the Houthis are an illegitimate power. They overthrew the Yemeni government in the September 21 revolution, or it's also known as the 2014-2015 Yemeni coup d'etat. Yemen was poor, but now they're in beggary because they are governed by the Houthis, which are just a proxy of Iran. The Houthi flag, right, is not a normal flag with its stripes or colours and shapes, but it is just a sign written in Arabic. And their sign says, God is the greatest, death to America, death to Israel, curse be upon the Jews, victory to Islam. That's the Houthi flag. That's what governs them.
Yeah.
They're funded, they're equipped, they're trained, sourced, directed by the mullahs in Iran. And Iran has a goal, and that was from Iran, they now govern Iraq because since Saddam Hussein's fall. They did have Syria until the Assad regime fell, but now they're trying to negotiate to get a foothold in Syria and establish routes to rearm Hezbollah. They had Lebanon with Hezbollah. They had all of that. And then they took Yemen. And Yemen has been fighting with the Saudis for years because Iran hates the Saudis. Iran hates the Saudis because Iran is a Shiite nation and the Saudis are a Sunni nation. The Shiites consider the Sunnis apostate and vice versa. And the Iranians believe, or the mullahs believe, that the Saudis are apostate and shouldn't have control of their holiest sites of Mecca and Medina. And so they put the Houthis into Yemen, and they've been fighting with the Saudis, and the Saudis have been fighting back. And so the only two countries really that are a blockage to completely surrounding Israel is Saudi Arabia and Jordan.
So I've actually got the real ability to follow this because you're using your hands. But there is a lot of stuff going on here that people are just thinking, wow, this is just like, but I'm looking at you, so I've got that advantage. But one of the things that people do think about and do know very well about is the situation in Israel regarding the hostages and the political situation there. That's where, if you talk about Israel, that's where their minds go. So where are we up to there?
Okay, there are still some alive. We don't know how many. And no matter how many times Israel has put forward the plan, a ceasefire plan, Hamas has rejected it every single time. It's not that Israel rejects it, it's that Hamas rejects it, because there are certain things Israel they cannot agree to, and that is Hamas staying in power and being armed, right? The problem is that when you've got really distraught families who are being basically tortured because their loved ones are being tortured in tunnels. I mean, the underground of Gaza is like Swiss cheese. The tunnel building has not stopped since the beginning of the war. It's ongoing. And we know the conditions that they're in and how they're being tortured. So the families are saying anything, agree to anything, just get them back.
Yeah.
But to agree to anything means allowing Hamas to stay, allowing them to be armed, releasing all Palestinian terrorists from prisons in Israel so that Hamas can do again what they promised to do for repeating October 7 again and again. And it will result in thousands more of Israelis dying or being kidnapped. So Israel's between a rock and a hard place, but she's got to think, I've got to keep the whole of the country safe, even though I want these 50, 60 hostages brought home, even though most of them may be dead. And the very hard left in Israel have been rioting in the streets and calling for the overthrow of the government, causing a lot of troubles. It's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to be praying for Israel and her government. Absolutely, we need to be doing that, as the Bible says, but also for the liberation of the Gazans and the Lebanese and the Yemenis from the terrorists who are crushing them, and they are crushing them. The thing is, at the moment, there are the legitimate government, which is recognised in Yemen, recognised by the international community, are actually working now. They're working on a very big armed contingent to go against the Houthis. America's not going to do that, but they're encouraging them. Saudis are encouraging them, and the UAE is also encouraging them to go in and fight the Houthis themselves on the ground with support and encouragement from the international community.
Mandy,
it's a real hotbed, that neighbourhood.
It's huge. We could talk on and on, to be honest, but as a mother, parent, grandparent, I just the anguish that must be happening for people who know their loved ones are still there, and even the concept of having tunnels underneath the city. Like I guess I'd love to explore that with you sometime too.
Sure.
What that actually looks like, why, and what the conditions are. I mean, I'm trying to even imagine sewage or anything like that.
There isn't any.
Yeah.
So you can imagine.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.